Gi awakens one day to find that he is transformed into a beautiful girl. 10 hours ago, he was a fat, unattractive man working at an internet cafe. There, he is bullied by his coworker despite not doing any work. He is warned not to tell on him to their boss, or else there will be consequences. Later, their boss discovers that they are 20,000 won short in the till, which his coworkers blame him for. Gi reluctantly takes the blame, and after an altercation with an angry customer, he lumbers away to a convenience store. He is angered that both the money missing and the fight with the customer will be coming out of his paycheck. He returns home, bitter about the day's events, but he vents out frustration in a video game, his only refuge. After dying, he slumps into bed, where he begins his strange transformation into a woman. The next morning, he responds to a delivery man who is enamored by her appearance. Gi, shocked by his transformation, begins checking out his new body and screams. Gi examines his body closer and remarks that it's quite attractive. As expected, he first tries to feel himself up. Still confused, he tries to seek questions in a chat room, but they are dismissive of him. However, one individual sends him a private message, trusting him. He asks where to buy a bra, and they instruct him to check his size. He manages to measure it at a 70G, but the person is in disbelief. Gi is instructed to visit a specific store, but with no clothes to wear, he reluctantly puts on a limited edition cosplay outfit, attracting stares all around. Gi nervously enters the girls' store, and an attendant soon comes to his aid. When he loudly declares his cup size, the attendant and the patrons are astonished. He eventually has a changing room to himself, but has difficulty putting it on. When the attendant checks on him, he instinctively becomes embarrassed and screams. He later sees a boy being bullied and follows them into an alley. However, he bites off more than he can chew when he begins getting harassed instead. He is saved when a passerby starts calling the attention of police, and the bullies escape. As Gi collapses from the shock, the passerby approaches him and introduces herself as Min, the person who messaged him earlier. After buying her new clothes, Min takes Gi to a restaurant where she eats her fill. Min is startled by Gi's appetite and shocked by his sloppiness. She reminds him that he is now a girl and should be more conscious of that fact. After leaving the restaurant, Min is exasperated at Gi's insistence on maintaining his old hobbies, and she decides to introduce him to more female-appropriate ones. Min is horrified by the fact that Gi has not showered in over a week, prompting a lecture on poise and style. They later visit a fortune teller who warns Min not to pursue the current guy she's chasing, causing her to leave in a huff. She then turns to Gi and likewise warns her to stop wearing someone else's clothes, lest misfortune befall her as well. Min goes off to see Seong and offers to make him tofu hot pot, but he turns her down, citing that he is too tired. While reflecting on the day's events, Min visits Gi, alcohol in tow. She plainly asks him what he thinks of her as a woman, and he readily replies that she is cute, like a younger sister. This answer only irritates Min, as this is what her older brother said as well. Min spends the night, while Gi is excited to start his new life as a woman. Gi awakens the next day, delighted to see that Min has cooked him some porridge before she left. However, he soon laments the fact that he is running out of money when he receives a call from his boss asking why he hasn't worked in 2 days. When he arrives at the internet cafe posing as Gi's cousin, Ryum, to claim his paycheck, both the boss and his coworker are visibly nervous when talking to him. Although not sure why at first, he realizes it's because he's a girl and plots his revenge. He drops a hairpin into a urinal and seduces his coworker into retrieving it for him. His boss then invites Ryum to work part-time at the cafe, but Min calls as well, asking him to work part-time at a convenience store instead. He takes her up on her offer before outing his coworker as the reason why the cafe has been short of cash lately. Meanwhile, Seong meets with his senior, Sang. They then go with Sang's girlfriend, Jen, to the convenience store. Sang enters by himself, and Gi recognizes him as the couple with whom he ran into trouble with a few days earlier. Gi barely manages to contain his anger as he rudely serves him and swears to have his revenge, remembering his cowardice in the past. Decades earlier, Gi was a promising track star, the pride of his high school. His teammates, jealous of his success and frustrated at constantly being compared to him, try to bully him into submission, but he is saved by Sang. The two become close friends afterward, but when the bullies later interrogate Gi for Sang's location, he refuses to give him up. Gi sees Sang happen upon them again, but he does nothing and leaves. Gi is bludgeoned by his peers, breaking one of his legs and robbing him of his future. For this, he swears revenge on the one person he thought was his friend. After seeing him again at work, Gi confides in Min, explaining their history together. Min is livid that such a thing happened to him, and when Gi laments that he feels powerless to do anything, Min encourages him, saying that he is a brand new person now. That night, a vengeful Gi plots revenge against Sang, whom he thinks is having the time of his life. However, two other things are on his mind: why Min clings to him so much, and why he was turned into a girl. Gi decides to try and seduce Sang, then dump him immediately afterwards. When he panics upon seeing Sang again, she seeks out Min's help. A self-proclaimed expert on seducing men, Min gives Gi advice with disastrous results. First, by over-applying makeup, then by trying to make him act cute, which only serves to deter Sang. Confused that none of her tactics are working, Min has Gi use her last resort, to try and act sexy. However, this only ends up working on two other men inside the convenience store instead, but it does prompt Sang to pretend they are dating to shoo them off. He ends up infatuated with her, prompting him to recount the memory when he later returns home to Min. The two turned out to be siblings. That night, Gi laments his failed attempts at revenge, but decides it's fun to live as a girl anyway. She has a dream involving a man and a necklace, and she wakes up in a cold sweat. However, when she looks out on her balcony, she sees the same necklace from her dreams. To Gi's astonishment, Sang asks her out to dinner, all the while ignoring calls from his girlfriend, Jen. However, when he overhears him talk to a male friend, she instead plots to seduce him and drive a wedge between them. Gi asks him if he has any other friends, but right as he talks about him, Gi passes out. Sang carries her and is spotted by some girls he was involved with in the past. They follow them to a park, where one of the girls burns Gi or Ryum's name into her memory. Sang continues to talk about him from high school, but notices he has passed out again. He wonders when the last time he was able to talk with someone like this over drinks. Gi comes to, but complains that he has to pee. He accidentally goes into the men's restroom instead, and when Sang goes searching for him, he does not see her in the female's restroom and is driven away. Meanwhile, Gi once again has a dream regarding the necklace, which has a hidden USB inside it. Upon opening it, Gi discovers audio evidence about a certain medical director being killed. A man walks in, and upon seeing her with the evidence, covers her mouth. Gi awakens the next morning with no recollection of the previous night. He panics for a while, but then receives a call from Min, inviting him out to a salon. Gi, remembering the dream from last night, checks the necklace USB, and to her horror, he finds the exact same audio recording. Min undergoes a glamorous makeover, impressing Gi. Over lunch, Min explains that she's going on a date with a guy she's had her eye on for a while, Seong. Min goes on to explain that as a child, her father, a medical director, died of suicide, and they were taken in by the next director, a story all too familiar to Gi. Meanwhile, Jen visits Sang at the hospital, livid at having her calls rejected the night before. Not wanting to explain any further, Sang breaks up with her. Jen, frustrated with Sang, leaves. Seong wonders what happened between them, but Sang eventually reveals that he was really out with a girl the previous night. As the two do their rounds, Sang notices something strange in one of the hospital beds: Gi's real body. Gi awakens in the middle of the night from another one of her nightmares and finds a collapsed Min next to her. Inspecting the voice recordings again, she comes to understand two things: that the deputy director was killed by this mysterious man, and that the body he's controlling is that of Mino, a nurse in the hospital who was also killed for learning of the murder. Sang calls her, inviting her out to dinner again. He then asks Seong to come along to introduce her. Jen visits Gi while he's working part-time and tries to bully him into not seeing Sang again, but he arrives to defend him, infuriating Jen. As the two walk out, Seong arrives as well, and Gi recognizes him as the killer from her dreams and faints. He comes to in a hospital, where Seong is also visibly disturbed at seeing a dead person come back to life. Min visits Gi as well, and everyone realizes what a small world it is. Seong recalls memories of the real Mino, a kind-hearted nurse who found out about his murder of the previous director. As memories of her murder flashes through his eyes, he is bewildered at seeing her alive once more. Gi returns home, accompanied by Min and Sang, but the latter is chased away. As the two settle in for the night, Gi is horrified to learn that Seong's father is the current director, further cementing the audio evidence that he's the killer. Gi tries to talk to Min more about this incident, but she declines to elaborate. That night, Min relents and explains that Seong was an old family friend, and it was him who first contacted them about the death of their father, and she immediately rushed to the hospital, while Sang arrived late. Gi's eyes widen when she learns the truth. Sang did not ignore him. Upon seeing him being bullied, he immediately notified the coach while he continued to the hospital, but the coach's attention was called instead by the principal. Later, Gi goes through the USB again and confirms several details. Min's father was falsely accused of embezzling funds, and his death was framed as a suicide. The culprit, Seong, the director's son. Gi resolves to inform Min about all the details in the morning, and discover the truth. However, when she wakes up the next morning, Min is gone, and to her horror, she took the necklace USB with her out on a date with Seong. Seong, recognizing the necklace, plots to snatch it away. He invites Min to a fireworks show, and she excitedly agrees. A panicked Gi desperately tries to contact both her and Sang, but neither answer their phones. Instead of going to the fireworks show, Seong drugs Min and carries her body to the old ward of the hospital. When Min comes to, Seong interrogates her regarding the necklace. And when he learns it's from Gi, Mino, Ryum, he tricks Gi into going to their location. Meanwhile, Seong reveals his true nature to Min, voicing out his displeasure at her father for all the trouble he put them through. Min is taken aback by Seong, whom she can hardly recognize anymore. Gi arrives at the old ward, followed closely by a jealous Jen, who calls Sang to inform him that Gi is cheating on him. Once inside, Gi sees Min tied up, and he is hit on the head with a baseball bat. As his vision darkens, the last thing he sees is Seong, ready to kill Min. Seong reveals the truth to Min. Her father, Jong, did not commit suicide, but was killed by his hand. The reason was that the old ward was undergoing renovations, but a protected site was found underneath the building, halting construction, costing the hospital a fortune in fees. However, the construction company offered to continue if Seong would kill a certain patient in their care, which he carried out ruthlessly. However, her father found and accumulated evidence against him, which forced Seong to kill him. As he prepares to execute Min, she manages to struggle free and destroy his only syringe. He knocks her out and is frustrated that he must prepare another. Meanwhile, Sang is instructed to pick up supplies and is surprised to see Seong there as well. Sang, oblivious to the stakes at hand, invites him out to drink with Gi and Min the next day, and he agrees. Seong returns and ruins Gi's attempts to contact help and administers a lethal injection. As his vision in Mino's body fades away, his own body begins to show signs of life. The truth of that fateful night becomes clear. After Seong disposes of Mino's body at a bridge, Gi, who was at the same bridge minutes later to commit suicide, sees it floating in the river. He falls into the river accidentally and resigns himself to his fate, but after remembering his troubled past, decides to try and save Mino. Despite his best efforts, he fails to revive her, but that night, his body transforms into hers. Sang finally checks his cell phone and discovers several missed calls from Gi. He dials the number again, but Min picks up, pleading for him to come and save her. Thinking Min is merely pranking him at first, he's forced to take her story seriously when she suddenly drops the call. Seong has returned, snatching the phone away from Min's hand. He begins preparing another dose of the lethal injection. Suddenly, Gi awakens back into his old body and immediately runs out to search for Mino, but remembers that Min has been left alone with Seong, and he races back to the old ward. Gi arrives at the old ward, while an oblivious Sang explores the outside. Gi finds Seong just as he is preparing to dispose of Min. He tries attacking him, but severely overestimates his athleticism, and Seong easily restrains him. He interrogates Gi and is confused at how much he knows regarding his illegal activities. Gi threatens to report him to the police, and Seong taunts him by destroying the USB with all the evidence inside. Unbeknownst to Seong, Gi earlier visited the police station with evidence linking him to the deaths of Mino and the old hospital administrator. Seong drugs, then drags out the unconscious Min and Gi to dump them over the river once again, but Gi manages to regain consciousness and break free. As Seong struggles to get his plans in order, Sang arrives with the body of Mino in tow. A bewildered Seong is haunted by the harrowing image of Mino's face, which now shows a twisted, malevolent smile. Gi flips Seong over the fence, but tries not to let him fall so he can pay for his crimes. A terrified Seong tries to fight away a ghostly apparition of Mino, and he slips away from his grasp. Gi jumps in after to save him, which Seong interprets as Mino having her vengeance. The police soon arrive, taking Seong into custody. Sang and Gi reconcile and make amends, and the two become friends once more. They visit Min in the hospital, and when she awakens, she is shocked to see Gi's true appearance. Later in his room, Min teasingly asks him what it was like living as such a beautiful girl for the past few weeks, and he replies that there were interesting times, and it wasn't all bad. Most importantly, he managed to find a confidence he never knew he had, and solve a terrible murder. Gi and Min get along surprisingly well despite the change in appearance, as they argue well into the night. Sang changes his contact of Ryum to Gi's as he watches him bond with Min. The next day, he and Min jog, and he eventually returns to his old self. He reflects on the past few days, having lived as both Gi and Ryum. He resolves to do his best living his life and being true to himself. In an epilogue, Mino miraculously regains consciousness, while Seong is attacked in his sleep by a hideous man.